Welcome to another Detailing Bay podcast. We've touched on ceramic coatings and PPF before, but let's delve a little bit deeper and talk about what they actually are in some more detail. So Dave, ceramic coatings. You hear them banded about as ceramic coatings, SiO2 coatings, glass coatings. What actually is it? Are they all from the same family?
Yeah, that'd be the best way of putting it, from the same family. And you're probably best to save confusion keeping it quite loose in that sense. So SiO2 is a raw ingredient in your ceramic coatings, and then the craze came on that we're going to start infusing it into waxes, quick detailers, shampoos. But with some branding, some companies kind of sell it on that illusion that, so you see a ceramic coating, a 2-year or a 5-year, and then you have a spray-on product, and you're looking at it's claiming these same components. So you think you're going to get that same effect. What you actually get is the hydrophobic side of things. So you get the slickness, you get the way the water behaves on there, but you don't get that hardness level. The actual concentrate of SiO2 that is in these is minute. There's
even
not a lot in there.
In the 9-year.
In them, that's where it gets more concentrated. Right. In the dedicated ceramic coatings, that's where it's more concentrated, and you can see that in terms of how much more careful you have to be in its application, because you are leaving something behind. It is leaving a layer behind, which you don't want to say permanent because it isn't permanent, but it's semi-permanent. It lasts, some of them last a long time, and it does. It bonds, it grips with the paint.
A bit of a weird question, but if you they've obviously got solvents in to help it carry across.
Yeah.
And like with a wax, if you just left it like in a little petri dish,
yeah.
Once the solvent's evaporated, you'd actually see what you're leaving behind on your car. You'd see like the carnauba and stuff solid without its solvent. If you dripped a little bit of ceramic coating into a little petri dish and it evaporated, would you be left with what looks like glass?
Yeah, so I did it years ago. So like back in the day when A Quartz, which is now C Quartz, Carpro, they sent over one of their coatings, and this time it was like mind blowing. You were like, but you also imagined you putting this thick layer of glass, if you like, on your paintwork, which obviously isn't the case. But we got like a little plastic square with just a little lip around it. And we poured it on very concentrated. It probably had about 10 mil in such a small area. And we left it we kind of forgot about it. So about a week later, we come back to it. And you could just flex the plastic. And yeah, it was coming off. You had like almost like these little shards like glass. It's nowhere near the strength of like.
Did it feel more
glass.
like glass brittle then, rather than bendy and plastic?
Yeah, it was brittle, yeah. But it was like, there was a layer there. It had coated it. We were flexing it far more than it would on paintwork, but it definitely does leave something behind.
When it comes to application, like you've taught me actually quite a bit about how to apply one. I thought you'd leave it like a wax to go hard and then buff it off, but actually they're pretty simple to apply, aren't they? Once you've done all the prep and you've got the environment set up, when you start applying it, it goes into like a rainbowy oil slick effect, doesn't it? You can start seeing it flash.
The thing you've got to remember with ceramic coatings is a little bit goes a long way. So one of the bigger manufacturers of ceramic coatings once told me that a lot of people underestimate how far a ceramic coating would go. And a certain formula, you could take a litre and it'd be enough to put a film across the size of a football pitch.
Wow.
And I was just blown away by that. And it gives you a bit of insight into how far these products can stretch. And then they're the schoolboys that some people make. Is like with a wax, again, less is more with whatever protective product you're putting on there. But with a wax, if you've put a bit too much on, everyone does it, they over apply a little bit. It's not the end of the world. It's never going to set in a more like a solid state. And then the same with sealants. And even if a sealant does like set more firmer than a microfiber will lift, you can get an APC on it, which can penetrate it and break it down. With ceramics, they are super easy to apply, but they're super easy to get wrong. You need that extra bit of eye for detail. For instance, when you come to apply it, a lot of people go really thick to start with. And then as they're pushing it out, they're thinning it out towards the edges, and then you have this risk of having high spots. The other one is when you come to remove it, that really anal with the fact that when you're buffing off, that you are lifting everything, keep changing your cloths, because if you let certain ceramic coatings fully set and you've got these residues in the corners, which is normally where they collect, they become a hell of a lot harder to remove then. Even in some cases, machine polishing, possibly wet sanding if you've got a bit too heavy.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because I've just been testing a new ceramic coating and I thought I'll do a 50-50 down my bonnet.
Yeah.
It were last weekend when it were nice and sunny. And so I've done it outside like a bit of a cowboy, just quick prep and then done the full bonnet. But I did half of it, just let it do the oil slick flashing, and then, like you said, give it a buff before it was fully set to level it.
Yeah.
Is that right? And then the other side, I thought I'll come back in 10 minutes, buff that off, and I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Half an hour later, I came back.
I mean, 10 minutes is pushing it.
Yeah, I know. I found out because I've come back after half an hour, and you can see where I'd applied it too thick. There's like almost a run mark down the centre line.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I've tried buffing it off.
Yeah.
I've tried applying more product to take that off, and the solvents are not lifting it off, so it's proper bonded onto the lid. So how am I going to get rid of that?
Your first schoolboy was doing a 50-50. Never do a 50-50 with a ceramic. Always impossibly hard to ever match it. So unless it's a test panel, avoid 50-50s. You have your 50-50 as a panel gap. Do wing to bonnet or door to wing, and that's a better example rather than doing a tape line.
Yeah.
To remove it, you start off... if a solvent's not going to do it, so you start with a more gentle solvent, even trying a little bit of the product, but by you explained that you've gone quite thick.
Yeah.
So machine polishing would be the first stage and just slowly work up to the point that you have removed it. And it may be the case that, by the sounds of it, that you may have to wet sand that way.
Ouch. Well, it's good experience. I won't do that again. And anyone who's listening can avoid that as well.
Yeah, this is what puts people off. But the good prep. Try and control your environment. It's not ideal. There is certain products that are a little bit more at home being applied outside, but you have to accept them risks. You can't control your humidity. You can't control temperatures. If it rains, wind, dust, all these are factors that you've got to take into consideration when doing it outdoors. Doing it indoors, it's a little bit easier. Definitely got a little bit more respect for ceramic coatings after that. By the way, the side that I buffed off at the right time, it looks great. The sharpness is absolutely amazing. It's beading nicely. And so for such little effort, if I'd have only done that all around car, it's always best to go a little bit early with a ceramic rather than too late, because you go a bit too early, you will find that you tend to move it around a little bit. You can back off and just give it another 30, 60 seconds. Yeah, when you were showing me that time, it felt like I was just rubbing off what I'd put on there, but you were saying, no, that'll level it and it's still going to gas off and you're still going to end up with a coating. And it did. So when it comes on to maintaining a ceramic coating, you obviously, we've touched on this before, but when do you stick with one brand for the shampoo, for the top-up products? You've got a lot of brands that do like something to revive the beading. As they're wearing, so after 12 months, the beading might start to drop off. Does it mean the coating's fading like it would with a wax? Or is no, not necessarily, no. With ceramics, the biggest thing people gauge it on is the hydrophobic effects, and when the water behaviour starts to change, there's this assumption that it's gone, but that's 99% of the time not the case. So if you saw a ceramic coating under a microscope, it's not this smooth surface. It's got little pores in it. It's a bit bumpy. And over time, bits of dirt fall out, clog these areas, and it starts to make up a percentage of what's on your paintwork. And that's what harms the hydrophobic effects. And that's why you'll see in more recent years, certain coating shampoos, not the maintenance ones, but almost like restart style shampoos that have more components going on in there, which help unclog the pores, which will revitalise and bring your coating back to life. Because if it has been correctly maintained, over time, they will clog a little bit. There is manufacturers now, I know G-Technic are really going heavy on it for creating coatings that are less prone to clogging, especially stuff like the new EXO is one that's, I'm sure they claim something like 50% improvement in terms of clogging. So they do go longer and less prone to it. But ultimately, you will get a slight dip in the hydrophobics due to that.
I know that even if you have them professionally applied, you can sometimes get a little aftercare kit with the shampoo and a booster. And I've always thought, well, if you did that with any coating, you're going to prolong the beading and the gloss. If you're adding something back on there. Yeah. But it's not a gimmick. It's actually...
No, because what happens is these maintenance products, take for instance that come across like quick details and spray sealant, they're actually acting as they're seen as top-ups, and they can help refresh a little bit, but if you use them from the beginning, they act like a sacrificial layer if that's on there, it's going to prevent the coating from clogging.
That makes sense.
And that's kind of the purpose for it. Plus, a lot of people have that. It's hard to move past that. You've washed your car, you've dried it and walk away. A lot of people love to, myself included, put something on there afterwards. But putting a sacrificial layer over the top is an absolute no-brainer, because that's going to prolong the coating in a hole more towards what the manufacturer is claiming in terms of durability.
Yeah, moving on to that durability, what do you think is reasonable to expect from a ceramic coat?
It's too broad a question, really, because it depends what the ceramic coating is, how much the car is used. Some manufacturers now are grading their coatings rather in years but kilometres or miles, because ultimately that is going to tell you which one is going to break down sooner. So you could have the same ceramic coating, one car's garaged and does 2,000 miles a year, the other sits on a main road and does 20,000 miles a year. One is going to clog quicker, one is going to just slowly degrade that little bit quicker. It's just getting more things thrown in, road salts, daily grime, everything. So when picking a ceramic coating, if you're doing a lot of miles, you definitely want to be looking at the ones where, even if they are doing it in years, that are claiming 3 to 5 years, because that is going to be a more durable one and more suited. But always look at the smaller number rather than the bigger number. If you're doing big miles, it's 3 to 5 years. I would then be expecting 2 to 3 years out of it, properly maintained. Right. If it's a car that's just, daily, but it's kept indoors, it doesn't do tons of miles, then you are then realistically well maintained, going to get more towards that 5 years.
Yeah. Does it make a difference if you've had it professionally applied? Do they last longer generally than something you can buy? Because I've seen stuff like on Amazon that's really cheap, little glass bottle of it, it's maybe 20 quid, claiming 12H hardness and 9 years.
Yeah. So there's two ways you can go about it. It's, again, real life durability versus like almost it's just going to naturally like chemically break down. So technically it's right, but what you're doing is you're reading that and then fitting it into your lifestyle. So you're going, I do 25,000 miles a year, all weathers, 10-year coating there for £20. I'm going to get 10 years protection, and 100% you're not, purely on the basis these longer lasting coatings become harder to apply. They become more dependent on like a set range with humidity and temperature, and even down to the right cloth for removal, up to the prep, everything. For instance, again, like G-Technics Pro range, Geon as well, they need a more controlled environment.
Yeah, like the humidity.
Yeah. So it's not a case of like they're holding it back. They don't want it. It's more complex than that. It does need training. You do need to be known how to apply them. You can't just apply these coatings. I've heard people before say, "Oh, I've managed to get hold of a pro coating from a certain brand. I'm going to apply it," and you're just thinking you're going to get none of the benefits of that, because it needs a lot more than you realise to put that coating down correctly.
So is it worth, let's say, I suppose you've got two markets then when you come to ceramic coatings. You've got your DIY that wants to do it themselves, and you can still get a good few years durability out of that probably. But then if you just want the absolute max performance, you want to take it to a detailing studio, what kind of money do they charge to put a decent coating down? I know it's like how long's a piece of string, but roughly budgeting, because you can buy a decent ceramic coating for like a Car Pro, their top one for what, 60, 70 quid?
Yeah,
sort of under 80 quid, which is not a lot of money. Are you you're looking more like 500-600 quid upwards, aren't you?
Yeah, because it depends. No detail is going to apply a ceramic coating to a unprepped paint, and I say that in the way that at least a single stage machine polish. And there's always a age-old argument where you can just put that coating on a car and just do the general fallout remover and so on. And it's like, you can, but doing that polishing stage as well will make a difference. It will give it plainer level for it to go against. It's fully free of absolutely anything, because you've not just used chemicals to clean the paint, you've actually used a form of abrasion as well. So it's going on to fresh paint. It's always going to have the better start. So you factor that in, it's very labour intensive. So upwards of 800 into the thousands, depending on.
Built into that, that's not purely the coating. Built into that is the cost of the prep.
Yeah, but that all accounts for the durability. Yeah, it starts from the minute they start to work on it. Every level of chemical decontamination, polishing to the right environment, to how it's applied. Because even the environment, the coating could go down easy, but how it's treated and how it's let cure that can affect its durability. So the coating could seem to perform really, really well for the first few months, but then slowly tail off, and then you realise, hang on, the paint's not as slick. It seems to have clogged very early, but it's not. It's just the coating. It's just not had proper time or the proper environment to cure either. So there's a lot detailers bring that allow that extra mile in terms of durability. But then on the flip side, you do have people where they accept they only want a year, they only want 2 years, and then they'll be happy to reapply it, and then you can save. So it's
Depends what you want.
Two brilliant avenues to go down. It's all dependent on whether you want to do it yourself and if you're willing to do it sooner to reapply it.
So moving on from ceramics, which protect your paint, onto something else which protects your paint a lot more. PPF, what is it?
So in simple terms, it's almost like a plastic wrap for your car, but it's transparent, unlike a traditional vinyl wrap, which would have colour in it. It's totally clear. It's there to preserve the paint. And they come in many different forms, self-healing. You can also get matte wraps, so you can turn a gloss finish to a matte finish, and satin as well.
Yeah, I'd not thought of that. That's quite clever.
I always think if you're going to go for a matte or a satin finish, either do it via PPF, or if you've got the paint finish, get PPF on it, because we all know once you scratch them, it's not you can't polish that out. It's back to the paint shop.
So how do you apply a PPF? Is it a DIY job or is it a pro-only job?
Well, there's nothing stopping a DIY having a go. How it goes down is a different matter. Like any sort of niche trade, if you like, there's definitely a ton of advantage having a professional install it. It's not easy. It's not always a one-man job, and it's knowing them little tricks as well. So it's, you'll use what's known as like a slip solution, which helps. So once it first goes down, you can move it around, which means you can get it into where you want it place-wise. So it's, say for instance, it has a cutout for a badge, that it's evenly distributed around that, and then you basically lock it out. So you lock a corner in, for instance, and then you'd start the squeegeing process then,
right,
and laying it down properly. The problem is when you come into areas where either you've stretched it a little bit, or you've halfway through and you've not seated it correctly, and it's all these little schoolboys you can come along. There's definitely a huge advantage having a professional install it, but anyone can. But you will also struggle to get hold of the better quality PPFs, as an amateur.
And I suppose if you are doing it yourself, you are being brave enough to tackle that, and you've got a couple of mates around to help you. Dust and contamination must be like your worst enemy.
Again, even more deadly than when you're doing ceramic coatings, because, we'll keep it simple. If you've got a white car and you're PPF in it, you may not realise it at the time either, but the amount of airborne dust, fluff, everything,
flies.
And that can even be problematic in a studio where you're being very careful. But now you're coming to a garage where there is dust in there. You've not dusted every element, there's no way. And you've not wet the entire room down to stop that happening. So there will be dust airborne, even off your T-shirt, and that's something that's going to get caught. The worst thing you're going to see is you don't see it at the time, you get a bit snow blind, and then 2 or 3 days later, you've got this time, you're looking around it, and you start to pick up on all these little bits of trapped. The slightest thing, a hair, anything, and it's knowing when you're installing, even in a controlled environment, like flushing it and making sure that when it's going down, there is nothing left behind.
There's nowhere to hide, is there? Especially in a light coloured car.
On a light colour, you've struggle.
Absolutely got to have 100%.
And the flip side on darker colours is it's all flushed out properly, and you don't get any residues from the slip solution or anything like that, because that's going to. So there's problems on both sides. It's not one colour's easier than the other. They both present different problems.
Right. So it is. Although it is possible to do it DIY, you've got to take a brave pill and be very
to get it done.
OCD
To get it done right, and it not annoy you 6 months down the line when dirt's building up everywhere. It's got marks, it's got a crease in it. There's definitely a huge advantage getting it done professionally.
Otherwise it'll be like, window tints when people have done them themselves.
You can definitely tell a professional versus an amateur.
Exactly.
100%.
How do you care for your PPF? Because there's loads of brands are bringing out, like CarPro's got almost a little dedicated mini range of
and it does make
PPF
sense,
products.
and it's to take the thinking out of it, really, because 90% of the products on the market are absolutely fine fine to use on PPFs. What you want to be careful is solvents and too much use of solvents. You're fine using solvents for tire removers, but you just have to be mindful of what you've got on there currently. But again, each PPF varies slightly, and you'd speak to your installer about, what products should I avoid. But in general, wash it with the same shampoos. Yeah, you've got PPF, you'll have PPF washes out there, and what you'll find with these is they are prone to clogging like ceramic coatings can. Right. And again, it's just slightly stronger to unplug the pores on it, to rejuvenate it. And again, they can be lightly polished as well, so you can rejuvenate tired.
Yeah, you mentioned
PPF.
this before, like machine polishing PPF, which to me, I just didn't think they went together. Yeah, but you can machine polish.
You can do it. It's best if you don't, professionals will know certain compounds that you can use that aren't necessarily advertisers for PPF, but for people like amateur, have got a DA, can revitalise, if you like, their PPF. And there is dedicated products like Geon PPF Renew, for instance, and that just gives you a nice, easy to work with compound, and it just brings your PPF back to life.
Are you looking like really light coats, like pads?
Yeah, you want to, it'd be easy to dull it. It's easy to make mistakes on PPF, so it's best, if you don't know, is to stick to products that are designed for that.
So I know for a long time you've been able to get coatings for your clear vinyl coating for your windows for security. Is PPF in your windscreen a thing now?
Yeah.
So what advantages does that
your windscreen is probably, other than your front bumper and bonnet,
and your headlights,
is going to take a massive hit. And these PPFs, they do go down. Again, you really need a professional to apply these, because they need to be perfect, because you're staring at that every time you're driving your car, and you've got a slight imperfection, you've got to somebody staring at it.
Drive you mad.
So yeah, they do exist, and they're brilliant. It preserves your glass, and it does help prevent against stone chip damage. Same applies for your headlights as well. There is some manufacturers out there where they don't recommend PPFs because certain coatings that headlights have on it, so you'd have to speak to your installer. But if it's not an issue, you can go into your headlights as well. But yeah, so in terms of protection for glass,
do you know what? I think I'd go for PPF on my windscreen before the paint, because I just got a stone chip the other day. It's put a bullet hole in my windscreen.
Yeah,
and that's annoying.
Yeah, you don't know. It could have prevented that. And even now, PPF is now on interiors as well. There's more piano black now. Fancier finishes are in cars.
That's a good point.
And also now cars are getting bigger screens in it. There is now these matte style effects, and they stop fingerprints.
All right.
And if you're like me, I hate fingerprints, and they just take that away completely.
Would you ceramic coat over the top of a PPF?
I think on the hydrophobic side, yeah. So you've got Expel, for instance, that do their, I think it's Ultimate, where it's self-healing. And then you hear people of ceramic coating over it. And you kind of think, well, what's the ceramic coating adding to it? So my take on it is, as good as a PPF can be at self-healing, and even though you have the dedicated self-healing, a lot of even the ones that don't advertise that to a degree can heal with the correct process with heat. But what it does add is, while it's protecting the paint from UV impact, the PPF is taking that hit. And over time, the sun, the UV damage will be creating this irreversible. It'll almost start to flatten off just a little bit. Now, what the coating can do is, because a coating doesn't go in that same way, a coating will just break down. So if you put a coating over there, the coating is now acting at, if you like, a sacrificial layer over the PPF. So it's slowing down that UV impact and preventing. Yeah, so it helping the PPF last as long as it can as well. And then you've got that whole level of harsh chemicals. A ceramic is absolutely brilliant on the scale, on a pH. It can take some pretty harsh chemicals without, you damaging it or breaking it down. So they are the purpose of them, and it does make sense, and especially how expensive they are. For me, absolutely. If for the cost of a product after it, for how much, the thousands you spent on your PPF, it'd be a no-brainer to put a coating on there.
I just wanted to ask, like, some people claim that like ceramic coatings are so tough they'll protect against scratches, and that's ultimately why you're getting PPF as well, to protect your paint from scuffs and scratches. But there's no comparison really, is there, between if you've got a panel that's got half of it ceramic, half PPF. Your PPF's absolutely.
So you can see demonstrations. There's quite a few out there where people are going along and they're scratching it after it's coated. Try and not look too much at the hards level. I know people do it on like the Mohs scale and it has probably, made it slightly tougher than your actual clear coat. The better way of looking at it is how slick it makes the surface. Less, the slicker, less friction, less chance of, impacting the paint.
So if you drive down a tight country lane, loads of brambles sticking out.
Yeah, but you've got to look at it as reduction rather than, stopping Prevention. It completely. What you're doing is, when you're doing your maintenance washes, and sometimes you could use a slightly coarser drying towel, not intentionally, it's going to help prevent washing marks and so on from that. You drive down a country lane and catch a load of brambles, and you may get a reduction in how it's impacted the paint. But what you hit in daily life, them coatings aren't hard enough to stop it impacting the paint.
What about PPF then?
PPF is insanely good. It will reduce the risk of impacts from stone chip. It can take some real hit. You'd have to have, I've seen impact damages where it's looked horrific and it's actually the PPF has taken it all and you've peeled it off. And the paint
I'm a bit sceptical with PPF because I'm not that bothered about protecting it to that extent. And I like to see that pure finish of my paint, especially if I'm going to be using like waxes every few months. And I always feel like I've never seen a PPF that you can't tell it's on there when you get close. If you get too close, they've got like a bit of a milkiness to it. And
it's the quality of the PPF.
Sell it to me as because I'm sceptical. Sell it. So why would I want
years ago, I remember that one of the first self-healing PPFs being demonstrated to me. It was on a Ferrari, and so it was yellow and it had a nice metallic flake in it. So it wasn't wrapped around the edges. This PPF, it was cut to. It had about 2 or 3 mil to the edge, so you could see the paint versus the PPF. And when I was looking, I could see a difference in clarity between that and the bare paint. It felt like the flake didn't quite pop, but it's seriously impressive. Kettle water over it, you can scratch it as much as you want, kettle water over it, fully healed. So it did its job, but I thought you are compromising its finish. But over the years, the clarity and the finish of them has just come on leaps and bounds, and you could get, I'm confident now, a properly prepped panel which has been fully machined with the right quality PPF over it. There's some out there renowned for textures. There's some out there people know, and certain people listening will know them ones where the clarity on it is just insanely good. You put that on, and you would nowadays you'd struggle to say.
Do you think if you'd done
touching,
like a 50-50 and a masking tape over the top of that lip, so you couldn't tell which side's done? Do you think you wouldn't be able to tell? They're that clear.
Yeah, 100%. Right. And there is some where you can tell, but the one with the PPF on it actually looks better because there are some that gives that warmth that you get from a good quality wax.
All right.
And it's like, it just gives it that almost an extra depth. Like when you see these show cars from some paint shops and they've just gone so heavy with the lacquer, it's giving that real warmth that some PPFs are even giving that off.
Right.
You can still throw a wax on there, and if you want, we all know, and you'll know especially, they don't last as long. It doesn't bond as well, but you can still have that enjoyment. But they do now look incredibly well, and even in the eyes of purists now, PPF's definitely a thing and doesn't spoil the finish anymore.
Yeah, I suppose I'm just a bit too old school that I do like that ultimate clarity, but if you're saying that's nearly there, then the next thing is the hydrophobicity, the water repellents on there. And I've washed brand new cars that have got PPF on, say they're just the front quarter and got a ceramic coating on, and the bits that haven't got the PPF on, insane water behaviour, lovely, like it almost washes itself as the car's driving. And then you get to see the PPF side of it. Water's not repelling hardly at all, even though it's got a coating on. And also you're getting round the edges where it is just cut to the edge of the panel, getting little muck build up. That to me turns me off them. And
that's a few of them you're picking up on the installer and B the type of coating they've used, because in my experience using an installer that can do it right, wrapping edges, using the correct sort of coatings to go on there afterwards, you can still get brilliant beading with proper dedicated ceramics for PPF and proper PPF installs as well. If you get people that go up to an edge, say it's next to an arch and you've got the edge and it's not wrapped, then that's asking for, and it's, and it's not been properly seated, so the corners aren't properly down and it's getting hit with water, dirt and all the rest, you will get a build up
on a white car as well.
On a white car, but that's, partly down to poor installation. But what you've still got to remember is these are very minute parts of the car that you're not going to, 99% of people you're driving around are never going to see. But you come sell that vehicle and you think, right, I'm going to remove this slightly muddy, mucky looking PPF, and you expose the freshest paint, as fresh as it was the day you picked it up.
So how long, realistically, will PPF last? And when it's done its job, how do you get it off your car?
So PPF, different manufacturers, depending on different films, will have different expectations of its life. I mean, ultimately, the glues will slowly break down and you'll start to get lifts in it. So it's hard to say how long one will last. It depends which brand you go with. If you go with a good quality manufacturer, you're definitely going to get the longest you can out of it. But again, speak to an installer and tell them what you want from it, and they'll be able to guide you which is the best one to go with.
Have they been around long enough, PPFs, to know how they're going to age? Are we going to see in another 10 years' time, like, 1 out of every 10 cars driving with PPF peeled up? And
PPF is new, is in like getting more mainstream, but it's actually been around a long time. And also with products like this now, it's not like the olden days where you just had to find out the hard way and wait for it to age. You can speed up the aging process of materials now, and you can find out how it's going to react, put it into extreme.
There's enough R&D gone on that they know.
Absolutely, yeah. And like you said, on like how hard is it to remove? Again, you want a trained professional to remove it, but ultimately steam is the best approach. And what you would do is you'd heat the panel up with steam, keeping it very close. You get an edge that lifts, and then your journey begins slowly.
I imagine it's a painstaking process. But at the end of it, if you've got brand new factory paint, then if you put it on a new car, it's probably worth it. But is there any risk of pulling the lacquer up with it?
When people I know some people have the cars PPF'd and were unaware that it has had spot repairs or it has had paint done. They've just not seen it, or it's that good a job that it's not even been brought to the attention of the even the detailer or the installer hasn't noticed it. And you do have a risk. Any aftermarket paint is always at risk, and you do have some people where they've come in, they want a full job, and have no detailers, installers and they've said, oh, the bonnet's been painted. So the install for a trained professional is not as worrying, because there's sometimes where you have to start lifting again and reseat it. But, done correctly with a good installer, that's not really going to be a massive risk. When it comes to finally removing it, there is always going to be that chance. You just don't know until you come that it could lift the paint. Slow and steady, plenty of heat and steam, is your best approach, but it will always carry that risk.
So as good as they are, they're not risk-free when it comes to removal. So what's the best tip for someone going and wanting a PPF? Go and have it. Don't attempt it yourself if you've no experience with it. Go and have it done by a professional.
Have it done by a professional. It will go down better. The edges, corners, everything will be wrapped. Less chance of like dirt getting in and any lifts. They're not 100% perfect, but the way they protect your paint is unmatched by anything you can put on in a bottle, basically.
Well, I've certainly learnt a few things there. Hopefully this has given you listeners some insight into PPF and ceramic coatings. Join us next time for more from the Detailing Bay, and in the meantime you can catch us over on YouTube, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for listening. See you next time.